He'll be back.
Oh, we're live.
All right, you are ready to go live whenever you are ready.
Let's do it. Hi there, everybody. My name is Amy Hunter. I am the Executive Director of Outfront Kalamazoo, and we're really looking forward to presenting this panel for everyone who's out there watching tonight, who is undoubtedly missing the in-person Pride Festival that is put on every year in Kalamazoo. But interestingly enough, not having the in-person interaction at Pride Fest has brought forward a way to have some different dialogue, to talk in different terms about what it is about Pride that makes it so special for us, why we are part of this movement for equality for all persons, no matter who they are or who they love. And I hopefully assembled here a nice subset of folks that share a common vision, but from different perspectives. And so I asked everybody on this panel to send me a question that they would like to be asked. Only one of them followed instructions, and I won't say who, but I will ask them to start us off by addressing why they think it is so important that we have elected officials that are out LGBTQ people. And I wanted to add to that, why is it so important that we have elected officials that are serious about being out as allies to their constituencies that live at the margins. So so I'm gonna throw that one right to John Hoadley, Representative John Hoadley, and please introduce yourself as we come to you, please.
Well, thank you, Amy. And a little birdie told me that you've got a birthday coming up, so happy birthday.
Right. Thank you.
So I'm State Representative John Hoadley. I have been the state representative here in Kalamazoo for the last 6 years. I'm running for Congress now, and so it's the whole Southwest Michigan portion, which is important because Michigan's never had an out elected member of Congress. And when I was elected to the state legislature, I was the second out official in the chamber, and we hadn't had one for 6 years. So representation matters, you know, and I'd say, and I know it matters because particularly for the LGBTQ community, it would be easy to assume that even in light of the incredible wins that we've had at the Supreme Court recently, that the movement for equality is like done, you know, check that box. But we all know, you know, and I'm looking up Marshall and I'm looking at other folks, that this is a movement that has frontiers that we still need to address. And you need to have LGBT people in the room to make sure that their voices are being heard. And we are disproportionately underrepresented at every single level of government. And I'll tell you what, you know, I'm in a lot of spaces where my identity as a gay man is erased, right? People love to put the points out where they cast a narrative about me while trying to erase the parts that have been a cornerstone, a building block of my lived experience. Yeah, I know what it feels like to grow up gay in South Dakota, right? I know what it feels like to have to figure out who you are and build an identity on your own. And so one thing I just love is that our community, for all the imperfections that exists in it, and we know there's a lot, it also is a place where we're always looking to try to build connections. I think that's a skill that is important in all levels of elected officials. And I'm really proud that the equality movement has done a good job, or tries to do a good job, at making sure that we're asking our allies to come with us too. And so, I love seeing that we've got Aliza Kelly and Dave, Mayor Anderson on the call too, because, we do this work when our voices are in the room and we bring people who can then be part of the choir of equality.
Exactly. So Mayor Anderson, would you weigh in next?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
And also, it is so nice to see everybody. I really am honored to be here, Amy. Thank you for asking me. I mean, to tell you the truth, I feel like I'm maybe don't deserve to be here with this esteemed crowd. So I appreciate that very much. But a couple of things come to mind for me when we're talking about this, and that is that the fact of the matter is that many, many people have spent their lives passing and living single lives, that are secret lives. And there's been the opportunity to do that for many, many folks. And it is an act of bravery, recognizing, what the world can be like, just to step forward and saying, this is who I am. And I think that means a lot to anyone when they watch somebody take that risk, particularly in a public space. And it's still a risk. It is not something that just is, oh, one day here I am, that's the way it is. It is still a risk to do that. And you are still going to face challenges and attacks and pushback when you do that. And I remember when Terry Kozeski, who is departed now, another joiner here, joined us and made that statement on the Kalamazoo City Commission. And I think that was a powerful component which helped the City Commission not only, in 2009, put the broader equality agenda in front of people in the city. And I think that also helped people in the city of Kalamazoo recognize when people talk about their real lived experiences. And the last piece of it that I think is so important is that, this concept about the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And this idea that we have had some beautiful phrases that were written in our founding documents, which still did not apply to everybody and still do not apply to everybody. And this idea that it is the continual reminder that we need to hold ourselves to that standard and not get comfortable and think the work is done. So I think it is really, really important. And I honor people who continue, to do that work and take that risk and be public.
Something just came to mind when you said the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Don't forget that something needs to apply the pressure that bends that arc of the moral universe. And that takes all of us, whether we be members of impacted and marginalized communities or allies thereof. All of our voices matter in getting this work done. I would like to take a moment to introduce Commissioner Stephanie Moore, who has joined us. Could you just say hi, Stephanie, and then I'll tell you what we're talking about, and also take a moment to introduce a little commercial for our sponsors. So.
Well, hello, friends and family. I apologize for joining you a little bit late. However, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Amy, for the invitation, and thank you all for being here. First of all, let me say happy Juneteenth. This is a wonderful day, not just for Black people, for the entire community. And so this is a day to be celebrated. I would be remiss, Tracy Hall, if I said happy Pride. June is Pride Month. I am still proud, hashtag, And so it's just an honor for me to be here with everybody tonight, talking about equity, equality. We cannot achieve equity without equality. So just being in a space that's welcoming and safe with my brothers and sisters, I'm just so happy to be here. Hello.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to take just a second and acknowledge that our signature sponsor for this event tonight is PNC Bank. They elected to stay on as a sponsor even when we had to cancel Physical Pride, and we thank them very much for that. They're one of our longest term sponsors, and they stepped right up and wanted to know how they could help. So they are our signature sponsor for this event tonight. And Bell's Brewery, Bell's Beer, is a presenting sponsor of, hey, look at that, there's Bell's Beer hanging around. Imagine that. Bell's Beer has stepped up big time and has helped make this virtual Pride Month possible by being a presenting sponsor and partnering very closely with us. And we're really, really happy that we have the support of some very esteemed businesses in the community. So anyway, Stephanie, we're talking about why it is important, whether for out people to do this work as elected officials, and why it's just as important for an ally to be out about being an ally when they're doing this work, work for equality. And I think, John Hoadley led us off with some very, very wonderful comments, and Mayor Anderson followed up with that. So you want to take a crack at why that's important, why it's important that you're such a vocal, such a vocal supporter of our community?
So I think it's critically important, Amy, that regardless of how you present, that you have to be about treating everybody fairly. I want to tell you how I really learned why it was important to be a part of this work. I was volunteering at Kalamazoo Central High School. I met a young man who had came out and was struggling, and he was suicidal. And he had several attempts of suicide. And the social worker, the behavioral specialist, asked me to meet him, talk to him, and just kind of get a feel for him. And basically what she said is, Stephanie, he's Black, y'all could identify with each other. I had no idea until I had a chance to talk to this young man, the struggles that he was having from harassment and bullying and low self-esteem, not feeling welcome or safe, or just not being accepted for who he is. And so after having this conversation and learning, being able to help him navigate, connect him to services, but also love him on his journey of being able to present in this world as who it is that he is and who he wanted to be. And that's when I truly realized that we don't have a choice but to work with individuals in our community, because in many cases, Amy, it could be life or death. And so regardless of how you present, what your preference, if you're an ally, if you're actually, a member, well, we're all a member of the LGBTQIA plus community because we're family. We're all brothers and sisters. But I think it's even more important for allies to be out here and to be strong. Number one, to be an advocate for policy change, to make sure that those mandates are funded, and to make sure that we're educating the overall community so people understand equity and what that really means, equality in our lives. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is to be able to support individuals, to be that listening ear and to give that love to individuals who need it the most. So it's really important that we understand, that we support, and then we tell the story, so that there's so many people that are alone, that don't have anyone to advocate or support them. Many people don't even know where to start at to get resources, that we have to be able to bridge that gap. I don't like to use the word safety nets, John, because a lot of times people can fall through those nets. We actually have to be that bridge that comforts, heals, and help people not just live, but thrive through their resilience. And so we celebrated the kickoff, Vice Chair Hall and I, John Kelly, of the kickoff of Pride. And it was twofold: to celebrate culture, diversity, and inclusion, but also a call to action for everybody to be visual, vocal, educating, empowering on the front lines, so everybody understands that equity, equality is for all of us.
That was a fun chat.
That was. So, Marshall, you have a slightly different perspective about why this work is important to you. You're a recently minted graduate of poli-sci political science program. You are running for office, but at the same time, you are melding the idea of running for office and making policy change along with the advocacy skills that you've learned as a college student. Well, so how is that different from John Hoadley's world?
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit different because oftentimes once we get folks in leadership, thankfully we have folks like John who don't forget about us, but it feels like they're 3,000 feet in the air. And so, like Stephanie said, I'm constantly on the ground. I'm a boots on the ground type person. And through my work, being the advocacy director of Upfront, right, this is what we do. We partner with our community and really tap into our inherent power that we have through our stories. And we talk about why being an ally is important. We talk about why seeing this representation within office is important. Well, it's not only about the look and the rainbow flags and the flair that John or Tracy may bring to these positions. It's also about their stories that they bring in the room with them, their mind, their experiences, their life stories that they bring that will give them a lens that further helps get equity. So the work that I get to do, whether it be my day job or the things that I'm fighting for as someone who wants to sit on a school board, it's all about the lens that we look through and making change that's going to be tangible as well. But we bring these experiences that we can also connect with different folks who aren't even in our community. So it helps us. It's, you know, at first I thought it was going to be a hindrance a long time ago. If you would have told freshman college year Marshall that he would be doing this work, I would have laughed in your face and said, I'm going to be a teacher and marry a dentist. I knew there was going to be a paycheck, right? But
right.
all on this call know that money isn't where it's all at. It's about helping our world and being able to be the advocacy director. We get to help heal. I get to be my department's about healing our community and showing them their inherent power. So that's where I get a little bit of a difference than someone who is already elected.
Gotcha. Great answer. Tracy and then Kelly, is the difference here that I'm hearing Marshall talk about, the difference between working in this business and being part of a movement builder, that personal story. I'm a big believer in the fact that change starts from within. It starts with your story and learning how to present your story in an impactful way. What is the difference between working at Equality and helping to build an effective movement?
And for me, I think it's so, in my life, it's so interconnected. I don't know if there's really a difference. Because I think what I do in the classroom, and I had been out in the classroom for a really, really long time. And I remember the very first time I mentioned that I was a lesbian. That was scary for me because I was around all these younger people. And at that time, not that much younger than me, because I've been teaching for a while, but it's interconnected because I think everything I do within my own lived experience goes back to what we're doing every day at Outfront, or, you know, I think about the county. We just passed our fourth our fourth annual Pride Month resolution. While it's only symbolic to some, it's meaningful. You know, and David mentioned not sure if the mayor, sorry, belongs in the room. You definitely belong in this room. Stephanie belongs in this room. Kelly belongs in this room. Stephanie brought up 1856 tonight in another forum. We wouldn't have had 1856 without most of you on this Zoom call right now. And so for me, it's intertwined. It's connected. I am who I am. It's without a doubt, being a lesbian is my most important and most meaningful, other than being a dog mom, my most meaningful identity. And, you know, kind of thinking about the importance, shifting a little bit, the importance of allies. When we passed that first Pride resolution, Stephanie was the vice chair at the time and signed that. That mattered to me, that her signature was on that resolution because of her work as an ally within the community. And that's what I wanted. And just thinking about the history of Michigan, there's something really special about Michigan. Harvey Milk gets a lot of praise, but what about Kathy Koshchenko out of Ann Arbor, who was the first member of our community back in 1973 or 74 to get elected? I think about our own community right here in Kalamazoo, and there's John, and there's me, and Zach. Bobby, how could I forget it? Our mayor, right? Our former mayor, right? Bobby.
Terry.
Terry.
Karen, right? Like, we are this Kalamazoo Pride Caucus that speaks to my heart and my soul, and I'm proud to be part of that. And we have a rich history in general. I think about my first opportunity to get involved in our community locally was in 2001 with the city of Kalamazoo, thinking about trying to change so they can LGBT, or at least gays and lesbians, sexual orientation when it came to health insurance. That was the first time I ever met River. Well, no, I met River at her store, right? But we just never, yeah. So for me, it's connected. It's who I am. Poor John does get erased, and I heard it even tonight. And maybe it's because I walk and talk and act like a duck. I don't get erased in the lesbian world. But yeah, and I would also speak on behalf of my friend Zach. He gets erased often from our community, which really bugs me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answer your question, but I do have a Detroit for you, so I can also suck up to the teacher, John.
Okay.
Hey, she's
All
your
right.
teacher. She's my boss, so I really got to suck up.
Yeah, no, I don't believe in that boss thing. We're part of a team.
Yeah,
It's a wonderful team it is. Hey, Kelly, so there's something really special about the connection that, and I feel it with you. I know that you are a person that I can call any time of the day, and you will talk me off the ledge, or you will tell me the hard truth. You demonstrate for me, you epitomize for me what leadership is about. And then there's another connection at a different level, that the Kalamazoo Gay and Lesbian Resource Center, as it was known at the time, came into being at the height of the AIDS crisis. And I don't know as well the history of CARES and how it came to be, but the two have been inextricably linked here in Kalamazoo, and that's been a very necessary thing for this whole time. How can we understand why it's so important that those two organizations came to power at the same, came into being and came into building a power base and building an effective programming presence in the community at the same time?
I think they both came about at the same time, and they came about separate, but with many of the same founders. And what, from my understanding, because I wasn't there at the time, that was partially because they were trying to make sure that the gay community felt heard through the resource center, and that people living with HIV also felt heard. And they thought that maybe the intertwining and the stigma around that. I mean, remember that, you know, even HIV in the gay community is stigmatized.
Mhm.
Some people that are still like, I won't date somebody that's HIV. There are still stories of, you know, I won't drink out of the same glass, you know, those kind of things. So why, I think, I understand why they did it. I'm not sure that I think that was the best move at the time, because I think we're more powerful together. I got involved in the work with the LGBT advocacy with you and through Cafe and doing that work, because I was seeing the stigma for people living with HIV. And the stigma is very much like homophobia. It's the same thing. So sometimes you'll see somebody living with HIV, they've had to go through the coming out process, and they've had that process happen. And then they have to do the same process when they're living with HIV, telling family and friends that may reject them. And so to me, until we were moving legislation, you know, in certain areas, I don't feel like we're going to see change. Like, I think this is why, you know, the biggest thing we can do is change legislation. I think this is why we have the call to action right now that I see Stephanie and Marshall and John doing, and the mayor, of like, all right, now it's time to put the pen to paper about Black lives, and let's make the actual systematic change, because nothing will change until we see that systematic change. You know, John and I did some work on HIV criminalization, took us 5 years. But to me, that was a big step in reducing HIV stigma. And so to me, it is hard to do the work at the same time as trying to do the movement building. It really is. It's hard to be the emergency people and the responder, and also then try to change the movement and do the work at the same time. That's definitely the struggle.
I would totally agree with that. So Mayor Anderson, how does the municipality fit into that idea of movement building? How does the municipality take what we did with what you did, and Mayor at the time, Mayor Hopewell and Commissioner Moore, and Don Cooney? How do we go from a specific initiative like 1856, which brought non-discrimination protections to the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community in a comprehensive way, to building a movement within the municipality and within the confines, or not within the confines, but within the parameters of the community? You're muted, David. David, you're muted.
Should be unmuted now.
Yes.
So I do think about that quite a bit, and I actually think about that on two very different levels, Amy. And one is that, and I think those of us who've been around and watched change occur, and a lot of times you work at the federal level and try to make those big changes, realize that actually oftentimes change comes from a lower level and works its way up. And the idea that you build change community by community, and really kind of human being by human being, that's really the way that the work happens. And it's interesting to watch what seems like, in some ways, forever ago, almost 11 years, I guess, here in Kalamazoo, and the changes that were made. And ironically, through the twists and turns, and who would have guessed, I mean, and predicted this event that just occurred at the Supreme Court here. I don't, maybe there are some very insightful people that would have predicted that on this call. To me, it's just kind of that astounding force that gets created that somehow manifests in what seems like momentous change that happens in a moment, but it is change that people have been working on in their own communities, laying the groundwork and creating the kind of human community connection that makes a basis for that. And another way that I think about that is if I'm just looking at us on this call right here, is that, and this is maybe being the old guy or something, I think about this, is that if you want, you know, I would like to take a moment first just to recognize how big that is, that happened this week. I just want to pause for a second and just think about that. That's a big, big thing. And I don't want to dismiss that and just roll through that. But I want to bring it back down to a smaller level, and that if you want to live a rich life, and you can do whatever you want. I mean, be a teacher, you know, be a lawyer, start your own restaurant, but work on important, meaningful things that people you get to know and become friends with. And right now, I mean, were it not for that initiative in Kalamazoo, John and I might have never met each other.
Right.
Or you and I might not have, Amy.
Right.
So Commissioner Moore and I worked together, and that was intense. We spent a lot of intense time and many late meetings together working on that. And now we are advancing things further, you know, with the Public Housing Commission, Tracy, who's liaison, who works with us from the county board, and Kelly, and you, Amy, now we're working on another big thing we've been working on years. And it's just, you know, get to be friends with people that are good people. And one of the markers for people that are good people is people that just care about this world being a fair place and are willing to spend some of their time and their energy and their heart doing it. And that to me is the most basic building block of this work, is creating those human, I mean, we're creating a family for ourselves when we do that. I hope that answers your question, Amy. But
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. I have a dream, and that is that we no longer use people as a means to an end, but we include people as the end and the means at the same time. As a transgender woman working in this movement, I've encountered what's the phrase? It doesn't totally apply. The soft bigotry of low expectations. Okay? Meaning that what could she possibly know? She's just a trans woman. She's just transgender. And you know what? She looks stereotypically feminine. And as long as she doesn't talk too much, that doesn't bother the people in the room, the legislators in the room. But my brain had always been 5 steps ahead of a lot of people. And I always felt like I was dismissed for my ability to think about strategy, to think about how to formulate a movement that is equitable, inclusive, finds a place to teach and to grow and to give people a sense of ownership, give them back, or not give them back, but make it possible for them to understand that their agency was never taken away. They only gave somebody permission to, you know, take it away temporarily. So, you know, that's sort of the milieu where I've worked for most of my career. And I think that within the municipal framework, that the germination of that idea of how that all fits together began for me with the non-discrimination ordinance here in Kalamazoo. That I saw people, you know, I worked with you, Mayor Anderson, and you, Commissioner Moore, and you know, with Terry Koseski, and people who knew more about how the politics of this worked, but didn't understand the culture that they were attempting to change. So, you know, I think that there's a place for that. John, I see you like looking like there's maybe something clicking over there that you want to talk about.
No, I mean, I think you're making a really good point. And, you know, I'm looking at everyone on this call, and I think to myself, so many folks on this call have been undersold or sold out, counted out in the past. And so I love that we have got such a resilient community that keeps bringing our authentic gifts in different ways. And I think that's why, you know, we're continuing to see those momentous victories that Mayor Anderson was talking about. So we didn't gloss over that. I think that's huge. And I just love that you're an example of that, and showing you've got both a keen mind for strategy and the skills to run an incredible agency. I'm looking at, you know, Marshall, who literally changed the course of conversation just in the last couple of weeks. So we are centering Black queer lives as a key part of the Black Lives movement, the movement for Black lives. You know, I'm looking at folks like Kelly, who helped change state policy in around HIV to make sure that we're actually keeping people health and safety in a world where it was all Republican controlled and people said it couldn't be done. Tracy Hall bringing accountability over to the county commission. You know, I'm looking at Stephanie Moore, who we have been in the trenches together on so many fights, making sure that we're helping so that the neighborhoods get resources that they need, so mothers get the hope that they deserve. I mean, like, this is what makes me so excited about this whole crew, you know. And so, and that's what pride is. You know, I was just thinking, I was sitting here because I think I found the last sparkleberry that might exist. I don't know.
Oh my God.
Thanks, Bells. And, you know, I was laughing. Thanks, Bells, for sponsoring. But I was laughing because I was thinking to myself, you know, what would we be doing right now if we had Pride, right? And I will tell you, my favorite, like, look, I love I'm sure someone else might be doing the, you know, the actual Pride Saturday, but I always loved the Friday night Pride that was added, because it almost every time, there was like one time with some rain, it would be like just all of your friends connecting in the park, having a cocktail or a non-alcoholic cocktail of your choice, because we invite all people to have their favorite beverages, and just like coming together and catching up. And it was like the biggest catch up that Friday night. So that was my favorite thing. I wish we had that this year, but I get why we don't. But you know, I was just thinking about I'm curious what other people miss about not having Pride this year.
So I want to answer that if it's okay, Amy.
Yes.
Okay,
Please.
but I want to go back just a tiny tad little bit, because I think Mayor Anderson, you made extraordinary points, and I'm really glad. But one of the things that I think is important about the local ordinance 1856, the city commission and the city as a whole embracing that, but the opportunities that it presented, right? Where we had the ability with businesses, agencies and organizations to say to them, you should be a champion of this as well. What are you doing to instill equality in your policies, in your human resources, in your hiring and promoting, right? And then we should have these expectations. If you want to do business with us, especially using tax dollars, you have to have a very inclusive workforce. you have to have at least a vision and a mission statement that talks about being a safe and welcoming place and how you are doing things specifically that assists, supports, and elevates minorities, and particularly the LGBTQIA community, right? And then I think about, John, how we look at health and health disparities. Kelly was just talking about HIV and AIDS, when really being Black and being exposed to the virus and the stigma to that and all that came with, then you have to deal with, being a same gender loving individual, being part of a community, but it was your race that determined your access, your outcomes, everything, right? And so taking all of this work and putting it together, I think Amy brought an awesome question, like, why is it important? And I don't want to miss the opportunity to put race in there, because when you're talking about especially trans women, Black trans women, who are more likely to be hurt or worse, killed, when we're talking about lesbian, queer individuals who are harassed, violently beaten, taken advantage of, and especially, when you're Black, Hispanic, and even Indigenous. So I don't want to miss that opportunity that at local government, we have a responsibility to make sure that we are inclusion in what we look like and how we deliver that work, but also be intentional and putting race in there so that we are setting forth, we're deploying all of the things that we need to that really has that impact. And then I want to go to what John just said about Pride. Like this year, this quarantine, oh my God. But we can make the best out of it. I agree, John, being in that space, which is like this huge family reunion, and you're able to talk and touch and drink, non-alcoholic if that's what you prefer. I'm over that. But this is the thing. Amy, having access to resources. We talked about people who are sometimes isolated, not supported, not knowing how to navigate, being empowered with what you can do to make sure you can stay safe or have a better quality of life. Accessing housing information. Vice Chair Hall, she was very instrumental in making sure we just provided public housing for the LGBTQ community, making sure that bankers and institutions and organizations understand it's not just enough to say, oh, I believe in equality, but you got to show us that in your work, in your organization, and being able to have people at the table delivering those services and those decision-making, right? But then I also want to talk about the entertainment and the fun and just having this camaraderie where you feel like you feel good being you, that you feel good in a space where people see you. Tracy, you just talked about people being erased, right? Where you're seen and you're heard and you're embraced, and you know that, damn it, somewhere out there, somebody loves me, right? And sometimes they might not like us, but they love us, right? And lastly, I want to say this, my very good friend, Vice Chair Hall, like many of us, have been through a lot. She just had a huge transition in her family. That circle had been broken, and she has the ability to have this family that comes together with her and love and support her on this journey as she has to go through that process, right? And so I think that's important, that we are here for one another, and we, Marshall, tell those stories. Stories are powerful and they are important, and by golly, damn it, say their name. Say his name, say her name, say their name, say it, because there's power in recognizing and affirming people. Amy, what you just shared with us, I want to affirm you right now that no matter what anybody thinks, you are enough. You are more than just a trans woman. You are brilliant. What you bring to the room, the energy, the glow. Oh my God, I know you don't need this, but don't ever let anybody take away from who you are as the individual with the creativity and the spunk. Damn it, when it needs to be said, Amy Hunter will say it. So we need to do more of affirming each other and empowering each other about what we need to do. And John, that's what Pride does. it celebrates, it acknowledges, it empowers and affirms. And so just because we're not there, we are there. We are it, right? So we're gonna turn up. Okay, so that's all I got.
Right. I want to just real quick here see if Kelly or anyone else has something they want to suggest, and we're getting a little low on time, and so I want to make sure that we get some final comments in, and then open up the floor for Q&A if there's folks out there that would like to ask us some questions. So if there's anything in particular that anyone would like to address.
Yeah, I
before
wanna-
we
I
go
just-
to Q&A.
I just want to add on to what Stephanie had to say. Stephanie, I want to say I am so proud of you for putting forth that resolution about racism being a public health crisis. You know, over half of all new infections of HIV are African Americans, and they only represent 13% of the population. And that has been continuous, and that is an issue. And what we see with our Black clients is where they're worried about having food. They're worried about violence in their neighborhood. They're worried about, you know, housing. And at the same time, they have to take their medications and be out proud and gay. And that's really, really tough. And so I think that the centering of discussions around changing this with the Black community is necessary. We have to continue to do that, and we have to do it every time. So I appreciate that resolution was done. So I just wanted to state that. I also just wanted to state the thing that I love about Pride, and I see it every year, is I love the young people walking around. And because I feel like I see, you know, I see young Black kids coming in that are gay, and I also then see young kids from like Constantine or Schoolcraft or from the country, and they're all coming together and they're all getting along. And there's always something new, fashionable that they have, whether it be pride flags as robes or, you know, the flowers. Yeah, I feel like that to me is just so fun to watch, or the glitter beards, or that I really, really love. I love the youth component to Pride. I think it's huge. And you could see they're so excited, right? Like they're here, they're like, we're here, we're queer. It's awesome. So that's what I love.
And I just want to quickly touch upon, Steph, thank you for acknowledging. That means a lot to me the last few years. But what Pride means to me is exactly what you're talking about. I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for my chosen family and friends. And they are my family. And it's every Pride, I look forward to seeing them and spending time with them and sharing that space. And Kelly, thank you for acknowledging Stephanie's resolution, one of the two important resolutions, because what we are going to make happen is we are going to make sure that we work with the YWCA on a pilot program that works on reproductive justice and health for people of color, for the LGBT community, especially trans individuals, and gender affirming reproductive justice. I intentionally left those words out on Tuesday and snuck it in, you know, Steph saw the memo, I think, and it's clearly in the memo, and it's a key component of that pilot. I don't want to look back. I don't want to leave our Black, Brown, Indigenous people of color behind, and I certainly do not want to leave my trans siblings behind when we have the power to do something in our community. So that's all. Pride means to me is my family. So thank you.
I would say, John's question was, you know, what do we miss about Pride? Well, I miss a good performance. I love music, and we get to be serious and suited up. And I'm like, that's when I usually wear out my jeans and pull out my good comfy shoes to be able to dance. But here's what I'm excited about, what #StillProud has been able to do. First and foremost, I want everyone to know, I don't know what other folks are doing in our community, but guess what? Outfront has been, also part of our mission now is being committed to being anti-racist. And so that's, you know, as Mary Anderson said, let's not glaze over that. We are committed to that at Outfront. So being able to pair that with the movement that we're seeing right now in our nation and our world, I'm in in awe of the work that we have to do, and we're going to be holding folks accountable to do that work within our staff, within the folks who do our programs, and we're going to hold our community accountable. And it starts with education. And of course, I could get on my soapbox, but we don't have enough time for that because I am the advocacy director. So I love this work that we're doing, but it's important. And, you know, even though we're doing it online, it's a lot of work that we still have to do and continuously have to do. So what I'm loving seeing with hashtag Still Proud Online is folks are seeing this intersectionality that maybe they wouldn't see if they just went to the drag show. We're giving them a little bit of everything. And also check me out on Living in the Intersections next Wednesday. I'm doing a training online. So we're doing the work, and that's what everyone on today knows about. You know, that's our lives, and we have a community to serve, and we have an obligation to be anti-racist. We have an obligation to make sure that the work that we do, we know about hatred day one. Amy and I talk about it all the time. That's our life, but we also can't forget the folks who live within the intersection. So I want to make sure our community knows that that is a huge part of our work right now, and we're working our butts off for that. And so very proud as a Black male, I can't express the gratitude I have to work for an organization that understands being anti-racist.
Excellent.
I think it's time for Q&A, isn't it?
Yes.
All right.
Any Q&A out there, Grayson?
No.
No questions. All right, fine. That means I get to talk at you. So, which some people are fine with.
Or
A
you
lot
could
of people.
sing, play
a lot
some
of people-
music.
I could sing.
Amy, when we were doing the Pride, celebration with Stephanie Moore, she made us dance. And I will just say, do you know who the best dancer was? It was Kelly Doyle.
It was Kelly Doyle.
Because I wouldn't
All right.
dance.
All right. All right. So I'm going to say one thing and then take us out with dancing, led by Commissioner Moore and Director Director Doyle. So and Marshall touched on this. The idea of intersectionality, or not the idea, but the way we apprehend that concept I've watched it change remarkably over the last 15 years. And it is getting to the place where, you know, I heard it tonight, and I'm not down on anybody about it, but I heard about, you know, someone talk about centering people. Stop and think about this for a second. Centering is a nice euphemism for tokenizing. Okay? That what we're really after, that centering someone does not give them equity in the process. What gives a marginalized individual equity in the process is giving them is getting out of the way of them being able to use their agency and their unique perspective of having lived as who they are under their circumstances. That is the baseline of intersectionality and equity. You all are going to hear a lot about that from my soapbox. All right, and now we dance. Does anybody, who's got music? Let me play music.
You know,
All right, we don't play music.
No, the
Happy
commission has music.
we didn't
birthday.
get the rights to any of that. So
Happy
no rights. We can't do anything.
birthday to you.
I thought it was
Up front.
DJ Moore tonight.
I thought it's always DJ Moore.
So it's Happy Birthday to Out Front is the song. So I want to thank, again, our sponsors. Tonight's signature sponsor, PNC Bank, and our presenting sponsor, Bell's Beer. And then the other sponsors who have stayed with us, Stryker is a big one who stayed with us, and a whole bunch, too numerous to list, that have stayed with us because they see the value of what Outfront does in the community and how we help make Kalamazoo and Michigan a better place for people to live. And we help people have better life outcomes in the long run. And I could not be prouder than to have been a part of this community for so many years. And interesting that, you know, what goes around comes around. I left for a while, went off and did the big girl stuff in New York and sat at the big girls tables and ultimately realized that where I can do the most good is right back here, where I came from. So I want to thank you all.
We're happy to have you, Amy.
So, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
I'm with Marshall on this.
All right, Mayor Anderson. You got the mayor. John, he's working up on you. Okay, Doyle,
All right.
it's your time now, sis.
Come on, Kelly.
Me, no. So we are still Pride. This is Pride 2020.
We are so proud.
Dancing. John,
You
you like
fools.
downtown.
That's right.
Oh, Mayor Anderson got it.
Oh, look at it.
Uh-oh, he's up. He's up. He's out of his chair.
Short leg.
Okay,
Mayor
so the
Showleg.
swag award goes to Mayor David Anderson.
Yay.
All
Happy
right,
Pride,
so proud,
everyone.
y'all. It's been real. I loved you. It's so good seeing
Love you
everybody.
all.
Have a
Absolutely.
wonderful Friday night.
The fight continues,
Pride.
y'all. Take care. of
Glitter
yourself
free,
and be
thank
well.
goodness. No glitter. Yay. I
Good to
lost
the
votes.
environment.